Welcome to the Shuffle Squads channel here. I'm PJ, your host on the Shuffle Pod here. We're going to be calling out all of the best picks for this upcoming meta here on our meta forecast. We're approaching a double regional weekend, which is something we don't get to say too often, especially now in 2024/25 season. We have Joinville and Dortmund in the same weekend. So lots of Pokemon, and what's even more special about it is we have Stellar Crown finally legal. We have made it out of the Shrouded Fable mini meta and now into the Stellar Crown meta. Very exciting. We're getting ready for all of the new Pokemon that we're going to see and all the new cards that are going to be in the decks. We're going to bring to you what we think are going to be the best decks for this upcoming weekend, whether you're at home playing some cups or challenges, or you're traveling to Dortmund and Joinville to enjoy those regional events. Now, I've got a lovely panel of co-hosts with me here, and I'm going to go through the list. You should know, hopefully, who some of them are, but we'll start off with my buddy over here, Zach. Zach, let the people know where they should know you from and what you've been up to.
Yo, how's it going? Zach Lesage here. You might know me from Pokemon TCG Twitter, or I guess X now he is. I've been playing the game for nearly 20 years. I've got my World Championship invite pretty much every year along the way. Most recently lost my top 8 winning into Worlds on stream. So you might have seen me there. You might think, that guy looks familiar. Beyond that, one of the top coaches on Metafy and content creator and management member for the Shuffle Squad. So hopefully everyone's having a good time. I'm excited to kind of go over some of these new decks for Dortmund and Joinville.
Yeah, and you're not just Pokemon, Zach. You've been keeping busy at home. So what's been going on there?
Oh yeah, I'm a Poke Daddy now. So I got that League Cup Riz. So when you see me get those crushing hammer against you, it's because I got a little kid at home now. So newborn about 2 weeks ago. So it's all for a little Kemi. So hopefully everyone thanks for the support. Every view counts.
That's right. And then we'll kick it over to who goes by the SoundCloud name Lil Richie, but we've got Dom Richie here joining us on the podcast. And Dom, where should the people know you from, and what have you been up to these past couple of weeks here?
Yeah, so obviously I'm Dom. I'm pretty much on the Shuffle Squad YouTube channel doing tier lists every week. Sometimes I do weird deck profiles that deck Zach and PJ don't want to cover. But mostly you'll hear me on Twitter yapping about if Raging Bolt is good or bad. And, I'm a little bipolar about that one, but it seems good right now. If you would have joined the last Shuffle Pod, 2 weeks ago, I would have told you it was a horrible deck. That depends how the cup this weekend goes. Unlike Zach, I did not lose my winning into World's top 8. I lost my winning into a cup top 8. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to know about me.
Nice. And last but certainly not least, we have Little Dark Fury with us, not known as Little Dark Furry, and I apologize for the last time you were on. But LDF, let the people know where they should know you from and what you've been up to these past couple of weeks here.
Yeah, so of course I'm Little Dark Fury. You may know me from my YouTube channels. And yeah, I like playing rogue decks, playing all the fun stuff. I have my competitive channel too, which I like to post more competitive based content on. And I've just been kind of chilling the past couple weeks, making content from the new set, playing all of the new decks, really enjoying the new set release. I've been making a lot of shorts content now, so I've been trying to expand my content a bit more. So I'm making more shorts, but I've just been kind of grinding the content, and I'm pretty excited to talk about the Dortmund meta in today's video, because I'm pretty excited to see what decks do well as we are in this fresh new format. And also, I'm sure, we're all going to Kentucky, right? So, this could be important information to have going into the next big American regionals.
Exactly. And that's what we want to get to talking about, is all of the new stuff, right? We're excited again for all the Stellar Crown cards that have been legal. We've been able to play them on PTCG Live for a few weeks now, and then, going into an in real life tournament, whether again, you're home or you're at these regionals, still going to be beneficial to you to learn how to play these cards. A lot of them do a lot of things, and we want to learn how to play them the right way. We don't want to play our Noctowl when there's not Terra Pokemon in play, little things like that. So I want to kind of go full circle here, and we'll start off with you, Zach. I want you to tell me what the coolest cards you've been playing with so far are and why.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I mean, I think for me, the card that I think is the coolest right now is probably Area Zero Underdepths. There's a lot of broken cards from this set, but having a big bench is kind of the core of so many different decks that we see seeing success. So we have the Palkia decks, the Terapagos decks, Miraidon's playing it. We see Raging Bolt builds. Even Hisuian Zoroark V-Star is kind of back. So, I mean, I think that while it can lead to some zany gameplay, I really like all the different options that Area Zero Underdepths adds to the game. And especially we get to see some underutilized Terra-type Pokemon like Wellspring, Ogerpon, and we have Mewtwo EX being able to see some success there. So I think it's a really cool card across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. And who doesn't love a big bench? You know, people that were playing Mega Rayquaza EX back in the day, now that they can live their full dream and not be under the Eternatus meta that we had for that very short time in and out. But I really do like Area Zero also. I think that it's super cool. It definitely helps out a lot of decks. Even decks, you know, you talked about having Hisuian Zoroark, Palkia has been coming back because of Area Zero. So that's been really fun to play with and to see what that card can do. So I think that we're going to see a lot more from Area Zero than we are expecting. And that kind of says a lot about the set, where now we're looking at the trainers and not just the Pokemon as these game-changing cards. So we'll kick it back over to you, Dom. Dom, what have been some of your favorite cards to play with in this new set?
So I played I started getting back into Pokemon with Shady Dealings as an engine.
Yeah.
Like Intel Urshi, like not Rapid Strike, but like just Inteleon Urshifu is like the deck that got me back into playing. I just really liked that deck. So Noctowl's probably my favorite card from this new set. I've actually never played Noctowl without having a Terra Pokemon. So see that as you will, but I'm probably just better than everybody that does. But yeah, like I don't know, Noctowl is just a really cool card. I think having a Terra Pokemon in play is it's a great, like, not restriction, but like a requirement that I think it just makes the card a little less broken, because Shady Dealings was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Just being able to throw that in any deck. Now at least you need a Terra Pokemon, and like it makes Palkia good again, and Palkia is where I started getting more competitively back into the game.
Right.
So I really like Noctowl.
Yeah, Noctowl is super good, and obviously, who doesn't love getting two trainers of whatever you want? You know, we have Pidgeot already in the format that can get one every turn, but just getting two, obviously, really good. We had Arceus for forever, and you know that didn't see play anymore. Now you can play Arceus, you can play Pidgeot, and you can play Noctowl all in the same deck, and you get whatever cards you want. Who cares anymore? We're just going freestyle, doing our thing. So obviously that, plus I think Fan Rotom is obviously not talked about enough, but Fan Rotom can obviously get you your Noctowl, which can then daisy chain into getting your trainer card. So I think that that's been really cool. We've seen that incorporated in a lot of decks going forward. So definitely super cool card. One, I'm excited to see how it's going to actually play, you know, maybe on a big stage or at some league cups for sure. And then we'll kick it over to you, LDF. I know that you've been playing a lot of spicy decks. So what have been some of your favorite cards so far in Stellar Crown?
So I've been testing a little bit, obviously outside of content creation. I've been going to a few tournaments. I've been really trying to make Dragapult work right now. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Dragapult. I think Dragapult is a very powerful card. I think Phantom Dive is the single strongest attack in the format right now. Just trying to figure out the best way to play it, whether it's to Drago or playing Pult. And I've been playing a lot of Dragapult. I've been trying to revive Charizard Dragapult, but it's been okay. I think Brier really changes the dynamic of playing a deck like Charizard and Dragapult now. And from what I've been testing, I think Dragapult is a decent deck, but I'm a little scared of Lugia. Actually, just before this recording, I just finished playing like a little online Mickey tournament, and I got top 4 with a Dragapult list I like randomly just made like 10 minutes before the tournament. The deck felt fine. I think like my issue with Dragapult is like, I think it's strong, and I really want it to be good. Like, I have Dragapult as one of my top potential plays for Kentucky, but I'm just really like kind of figuring out, can the deck actually beat decks like Charizard, Lugia, Regidrago, Palkia, stuff like that. But yeah, I've been really loving Dragapult. I think that Phantom Dive is really good, and I think that I want to be playing a deck that does Phantom Dive this format. And especially with Brier being in the mix, and Dusknoir's popularity, Phantom Dive actually ends up being very valuable at dealing with Duskulls.
Exactly. Now, with Dragapult, we've obviously seen Brier be a huge card in this list, and especially since, Terra Pokemon are not only main attackers in decks like Dragapult and Charizard, but they're such a splashable card in so many decks. Zach was already talking about Wellspring Ogerpon. You never see that card. We've got Cornerstone Ogerpon, all the teal masks, everything like that. You could just see it in any deck, right? Even in Raging Bolt. Brier's been such a huge game-changing card to take potentially 3 prize cards in a turn. But another card I wanted to ask you about, since you're a Dragapult main for right now, is Sparkling Crystal, one of the new A specs. Have you seen success with it? I know that I was playing a deck here on the Shuffle Squad's YouTube channel not too long ago when we had Sparkling Crystal in there, and also Crispin. Both have been really, really good cards. So what are your thoughts on both of those?
Yeah, I think Crystal, especially in Dragapult, is just nuts. Like being able to get turn 2 Phantom Dive off is a lot more easier now with Crystal, especially like compared to Regidrago, where Regidrago has to work a little bit to get that turn 2 Phantom Dive. Dragapult can just go Arvin for Candy, Dragapult. And as long as you have an energy card and you don't prize Crystal, it's pretty likely you're going to get turn 2 Phantom Dives. So like as I've been testing Dragapult, I've been finding like going first to be really good. It's nice to go first against V-Star decks and against Charizard, and also good into the Terrapagos Dusknoir deck, which likes to go first right now. So I'm definitely like a big fan of Sparkling Crystal. There's a lot of potential for that A spec. I've kind of been theory crafting like other fun video ideas with Crystal, because you can play with like any Terra Pokemon. And then Crispin has been really good too. Like before, if you're playing a deck like Dragapult, you're playing Mela in the deck as a way to accelerate energy, but now you can play Crispin. You can just go Crispin, attach Fire or Psychic, and then grab the other one and then attach for turn. So I think those 2 cards are definitely really strong. Crispin's definitely a supporter that I think has potential to kind of be more played in the meta, because it's an energy acceleration supporter. It's a little bit different because you do have to play multiple energy types. You also have to have the 2 energy in the deck. I've lost a game before because I thought Crispin allowed you to grab 1 energy out of the deck and attach it when I only had the 1 energy type in the deck. And it turns out you can't do that. You have to put the energy in your hand first. But I think there's a lot of variety with Crispin. I think Crispin's a very strong supporter. And just, again, being able to put energy into play for turn is really good. Even if you're not drawing cards like with Sada, I think the card is still like really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And energy acceleration has always been a great supporter card. We look back to the formats with Welder, even some specific energy cards. We had Volkner at one point. There's so many good energy acceleration supporter cards that we can talk about in past Pokemon formats. So obviously with Terra type Pokemon requiring that multiple energy typing, I can see Crispin being better and better as we go into the future of the TCG. So another thing I wanted to touch on here while we're talking about new cards is obviously the new archetypes that we're potentially going to see at these regional events. So Zach, you and I have talked a lot about Terrapagos EX as a brand new Pokemon, and we saw Josh Frink on the channel, winning a online tournament with that pretty big online tournament for, I think, Blue Ditto. And obviously, Terrapagos has been one of our favorites in testing right now. Do you think that that's probably going to be the main one that we're going to see come out as a brand new archetype in Stellar Crown?
Yeah, I think by default it has to be. Especially if we don't consider anything like Palkia V-Star being new. So, I mean, when it comes down to it, Terrapagos, I think, is the only real new big card coming out of it. Definitely has kind of tier 1 archetype vibes, or at least tier 2. So certainly some opportunities for some success there. And I think Josh's list was super clean at that tournament. So if you haven't got a chance to check it out, follow Josh Frink, Dreamju on Twitter. You can definitely see that list for yourself. I think it's a fantastic starting point for the deck. We've also seen some tankier builds. I know I just showcased one earlier on our channel. So you can go with Bouffalon, Scoop Up Cyclone. Like, there's a lot of really cool support for Terrapagos, including Area Zero, the card that I kind of mentioned earlier. So I think it kind of has the best of everything this set kind of has to offer when we think about Noctowl, Brier, all these different things that you can really add in there, Van Rotom, stuff like that. So really good across the board.
Awesome. Now, Dom, over to you. What do you think that what decks are really going to rely on these new cards. There's a lot of speculation going on. There's a lot of online Mickeys, as we call them, or the online tournaments that we see these new cards splashed into. But when we kind of get down to brass tacks and we're seeing people who are competing to go to the World Championships, what type of decks in your mind do you think that people are going to focus on, and why, incorporating these new cards?
Like truthfully, if you dive into Limitless, the amount of like decks that are actually playing these new cards, it's literally like Palkia, Terapagos, and like Charizard is like playing Brier.
Right.
Dragapult's playing Brier, but like even still, I've seen a lot of Charizards doing well without Brier.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that in general, it's just like Palkia is probably the biggest like old deck that now is revived and relies really, really heavily on these cards. Obviously Terapagos relies really hard on them, but like a lot of the big archetypes like Regidrago didn't gain anything, Lugia didn't gain anything. Like I think it's literally just like Terapagos and Palkia, and then like the decks that play like a one of Brier. Obviously, we talked about Dragapult gaining insane support. Like Crispin is really good early game, and then you can Crystal late game as well. Like there's just so much potential, especially with Dragapult. I think it probably is the deck that benefits the most from these new cards, and I think like that's probably Dragapult seems like a tier 0 deck. If Raging Bolt just kind of died, and I said that on the video that came out today, actually, is that like if Raging Bolt was not a deck, Dragapult is so broken.
Yeah, just taking charge and spreading damage, and there's so much you can play into that damage spread later in the game. It has a lot of potential to take those 2, 3, 4 prize turns. And you can't say that about too many decks. Obviously, LDF was talking about the Dusknoir lines and a lot of other decks too. Just being able to utilize that without having to play an extra stage 2 Pokemon is just so good. And again, with the extra support, I think that it's something a lot of high tier players are going to start to focus in on. Especially with big basics kind of coming back too. We look at Terapagos again, and it's 230 hit points. Now, if we're spreading damage around, there's got to be another way where, they're just not bossing something up from the bench, taking a 4 prize turn, and then continuing that success. We have Noctowl. Hoot Hoot is a lower HP Pokemon. If we're able to move damage counters around, we can start to knock those support Pokemon out too. So that's another reason why Dragapult, I think, is so good when we're looking at the competitive format and going forward. So kicking it back to you, LDF, I want to know, outside of, what you talked about with Dragapult, are there any decks that really stand out to you that are using, maybe some of the niche cards? We even see Flapple EX coming in and out. So any other decks like that might just pop up? Obviously, Flapple can utilize Area 0-2 and widen out that bench, accelerate a ton of energy, and do big things. So do you think any decks like that might see success out of Stellar Crown?
Hydrapple's cool. My issue with Hydrapple, though, is like a lot of your engine is just very fragile. Like you're just putting a bunch of Ogerpon in play. Your opponent just goes like Gust, Gust, Gust. But I do think at some point Hydrapple could be like an actual decent deck. Maybe when rotation happens and we lose something like Radiant Charizard becomes a lot more easier to manage. I do kind of like Cinderace CX. I think there's actually a little bit of potential there. Cinderace is low-key kind of cool because it's the stage 2 that can do 280 damage. It can be powered up with Crystal, Basin, and you can also use it with Feather Ball. So instead of Ultra Balling for your Cinderace and your Pidgeot, being able to Feather Ball actually ends up being pretty good. Like Cinderace actually surprised me. Like I don't know the best way to play it. Maybe play it as like a 1/1 line in Charizard, or play it with like Charizard. Like maybe it's good, but I do really like Cinderace. I think Cinderace is actually like a really interesting card that, like, if I were to like make a guess as to what the best card in the set is, that we'll see play that's not really like mainstream, I would probably put money on Cinderace. I think Galvantula is kind of cool too.
Yeah.
I know there's been so much talk on like Twitter about Galvantula, but I just think Galvantula is kind of mid. It's trying to build the deck around using the item lock attack, I think, is incorrect. Because it's just too clunky. Like the Blissey build is really just clunky and not very consistent. And the Reggie build is cool, but Reggie uses kind of falls apart to like random stadium bumps. And I'm not sold on that yet, but Galvantula does have a little bit of potential in the format. I've been thinking about running it within Miraidon because you can, it's basically just like a way to knock out 2 prizers. You can just go Galvantula, 2 energy, boss, bring in Fish or Fez or something, knock it out. It's got 260 HP. It's a Terra Pokemon, so it opens up the Area 0. And you can also use Brier with it. And you can play the Grass Galvantula if you want to maybe have a better time in a Zard, which Miraidon does have a bad matchup against. So those are like the only cards I think that are like worth kind of looking at in like a meta scope. Would be maybe Galvantula, maybe Cinderace. Those are the 2 that impressed me the most.
Gotcha. Very cool. Now, going into the meta and looking at, first weekend, brand new set release, we always have to have this conversation where we're looking at the older decks, the successful decks. Zach, you've been playing to lots of success. Both of the decks I'd like to talk about here at the beginning of this conversation, and that's Regidrago V-Star and also Ancient Box. Now, these are 2 decks that are kind of set to the wayside. A lot of people are testing the new stuff. But what do you think about, reviving these decks into a new format per se when it's just really one set? Do you think these decks can still survive, or how are they going to play maybe differently?
I think the biggest thing that everyone should kind of be looking at when it comes to the metagame is realizing that last formats, best decks and formats don't magically go away.
Right.
They're still here. They're still top decks. So Regidrago, which I think is arguably ranked the best deck in format, period, for the Stratted Fable formats, it's not going anywhere. It's probably going to see less meta share than it did previously. It did not gain much, if anything, from Stellar Crown. But what we can look into is metagame positioning and where its matchups lie. I think the biggest struggle for the deck is it struggled with some of these 2 prize card decks before. Those decks seem to be pretty good and have kind of new life breathed into them with Area 0. It's also Charizard playing Brier. Might actually make that matchup a little bit more difficult than previously it was. So those are really the things to kind of go over. Beyond that, I think for Ancient Box, I think it depends on how the placements for something like Dortmund and Joinville end up being. So while I could not particularly recommend playing Ancient Box blindly, you could hit a lot of those Raging Bolts that are really seeing success, I think, right now, based off of kind of the past 2 weeks of online play. Raging Bolt EX has been the most successful deck. Miraidon's been a successful deck. Turbo Roaring Moon has been a successful deck. Ancient Box does do well into all of those for the most part. I mean, things like Brier and Dust Noir really can change things up a little bit, but really it comes down to, are we going to see a lot of those Charizard decks, which are traditionally a tougher matchup, or Dragapult's EX decks that might pop up with Sparkling Crystal? So I think those are really the big things on where Ancient Box could be successful, or it could kind of flop. And Regidrago V-Star is probably going to fall somewhere in the middle, but it's really waiting for that metagame positioning and new matchup knowledge and seeing how well does it do into Terrapagos. I'm honestly not sure, right? I think there's so much ground to test with the sets. It didn't add a lot, but again, with some of these Terra-based decks with Area 0, I don't want to sound like a broken record, we kind of reinvent the metagame.
Right. Yeah, having Regidrago also being able to expand the bench because of Teal Mask could be really good, and you could throw some tech cards in there to utilize that. Obviously, Briar can still also be used for potentially a 3-prize turn if you're attacking with that Teal Mask. So still really good, and I do agree with you on a lot of those points where, the decks just don't go away. You just have to figure out a new way to play them. That's pretty much how it goes. So kind of hopping over to you, Dom, we're going to touch on 2 different decks, which I know that you're very familiar with. We'll start with Palkia, and I want you to explain to me why Palkia is good in this format. Why are we bringing Palkia back? Obviously, Area 0 is probably the key point here, but I'll let you kind of go on and do your thing.
Yeah, so Palkia, for those of you that didn't play about 2 years ago now, probably almost exactly, Palkia was tier 0, strictly you played Palkia or you weren't winning an event, right? And it wasn't for long, but Palkia was really good because it could search out the cards it wanted. Palkia is a great attacker. Palkia is beefy. You see a lot of discourse online about V-Stars and just on oh, they're a little too broken. Like most stage 1 EXs don't have 280 HP, so why do V-Stars? It's like Palkia for 2 energy, it can power itself up with its V-Star power. It has access to search through whatever it needs, whether that's a boss's orders, an Irida, which allows you to search your deck for an item card and a water Pokemon for more consistency. Palkia now with Area 0 can do crazy amounts of damage. Like you have 8 on your bench and your opponent has 5, and you're doing like 320 damage. You play like a Vitality Band, you can KO Charizard, which initially used to be a pretty tough matchup because like just in the late game, having to 2-hit KO a Charizard just didn't feel good, and not being able to KO Pidgeot didn't feel good. But like Palkia just has so much now going for it, and you can also play like a double Turbo Energy build where you use Terapagos as an attacker too, because it can be a really great attacker. Palkia just has a lot going for it. And it's a deck where really you can outskill your opponent a lot. So that's why I think like a lot of people like Cyrus Davis and Callie Moore, they're seeing a lot of success because they know their lines into everything in the deck. Like they know, oh, play this card now, search for this card now. And like it's just consistently searching for those cards. And like you'll see a lot of like top players playing decks like Palkia, like Charizard, like Dragapult that like you can outskill your opponent with. And Palkia definitely like right now, I think it's probably not as good as everybody thought it was going to be, myself included, but I think it's still like once a good 60s found, I really could see Palkia making really deep runs at these upcoming events. Where like right now, a lot of people are more focused on playing just Terapagos online. I think Palkia's numbers will rise coming into the meta just because it does so much, right?
Right. Absolutely. And then, another deck I want you to give me your thoughts on in this newer meta or testing for it, because you've been also testing for Kentucky, right, Dom? And
yeah, in Peru in a week.
Yep, exactly. So we're doing some Lima action. But Raging Bolt, how does Raging Bolt fare into this new meta? Is it something that will be really good coming back, rising from the ashes here?
So I actually like, unironically, I think Raging Bolt might just be the best deck in the format. Where Raging Bolt, like it used to take poor matchups into like Charizard and Dragapult. Well, not Dragapult. Dragapult was always good, but like single prize decks, because like late in the game, if they're one-shotting you, you have to KO a one prizer, and Charizard can hang a one prizer. And like Brier really helps a lot of that. Where like you can take a one prizer early in the game and then Brier KO a Charizard late in the game for 3 prizes with a Teal Mask Ogerpon. If you play your energies right, you can use Brier with an Ogerpon to KO a Radzard for 2 prizes and fix the math that way too.
Yeah.
And just like in general, like even against Ancient Box, it's like there's so many games where you used to be losing by 1 prize card where it's like, oh, if I just have one more turn, it's like Brier can fix that too. And Raging Bull, like it just doesn't. There's nothing that I'm sitting here like, oh, Raging Bull just loses to this, right? Like I'm not like
Cough,
I don't think there's a single
cough Mimikyu.
Nah, Mimikyu's fine. We just play shocks and more nice stretchers and we're fine,
fair,
right?
Yeah.
Like there's so much like Raging Bull can do, and it's really easy to play. I think
Right.
that's a really big thing. Is decks like that are just so simple. You just go Sada, attach Raging Bolt, Bellowing Thunder for however much damage you need to do, and like you almost never whiff those attacks.
Right.
Especially with Pheasantipity, it made the deck a little stronger.
Yeah.
And now like you can't unfair stamp it. You can't like there's just so many plays Raging Bolt has.
Yeah. And we saw it winning the Champion League too just the other day. So obviously it's got some wheels to stand on, but that's kind of where we're at. Now, if we kind of pivot our thoughts a little bit and we look at prior Champions Leagues over in Japan and what had won there and not necessarily translated correctly over here until later on in the meta, LDF, let's talk to you a little bit about Lugia, because Lugia V-Star was really good before, but now we're looking at all these bright, shiny new cards. Do you think Lugia still has a place in this meta?
Yeah, so I think Lugia is arguably like I don't even know if it's slept on right now, but I think Lugia is still like actually like one of the best decks in the format because it doesn't gain anything, but what it does gain is better matchups. So your matchup into Dragapult, really solid. You have like an 80-20 Dragapult matchup, in my opinion. Your matchup into Charizard is still fine. Your matchup into Raging Bolt, it's close. I think it's still decent thanks to like Legacy and Cinccino and Blood Moon. Bolt's not playing Bravery Charm, so I think that matchup's still fine.
Right.
I think Lugia is still a ridiculously broken deck right now. I don't know if anyone's really looking at it because there's all this like new Dusknoir like hype going around and everyone's like high on Terapagos and Brier Charizard and Raging Bolt. I think Lugia has potential to like kind of be like the most slept on, underrated deck in the format right now in a way that nobody really like is thinking about it. I also don't think anyone's teching for Lugia. Like
Right.
maybe like, okay, if I'm playing like a Dragapult EX deck, I'm probably going to be teching one copy of Temple so I don't lose to Lugia, but I don't think anyone's teching for Lugia. Like I don't think Zard's playing Temple or Hammer. Gardevoir probably not playing it. Like no one's respecting Lugia. Lugia is one of the best decks in the format if no one's respecting it. And it kind of feels like everyone's forgotten about Lugia, even though it literally just took like almost got second place or almost won Baltimore, sorry. I think that Lugia like deck is still good. The only thing Lugia is a little bit iffy about right now, though, and I've seen a little bit of this, is it has a harder time into like Brier. It's harder to play around Brier now, which is true.
Right.
I do think Brier does give you some issues because your opponent can Brier fix the price trade a little bit. It makes Legacy Energy like actively worse. Dusknoir spam is awkward because your Cinchinos get like constantly picked off by Dusknoir.
Right.
If I was playing Lugia for Dortmund, I'd probably just play the Rahul build. I don't think I would change a single card. Maybe, okay, I'd maybe add a Wellspring Ogre Pawn to the deck because then you can use Area Zero if your opponent's playing Area Zero.
Right.
Then you can actually like start benching like more Luminions, more Fez. Like I think Lugia is a broken deck that nobody's really talking about. I think its matchup spread is insane. If Snorlax continues to be a presence in the format, you know, you're going to have an insane win into Snorlax. Control's also good. Like the deck is just still very powerful. I just don't think anyone's respecting it or thinking about it right now. Yeah, I think Lugia is really good. I think that it's a deck that doesn't gain anything. It doesn't need to gain anything because it's still Lugia at the end of the day. You get those Lugia hands still, I guess, is like the one turn off of the deck. But honestly, I think Kieran with the Squawk ability was kind of genius.
Yeah.
Squawk double Mezagoza like makes your Lugia deck way more consistent. I've been testing a lot of Lugia recently after Baltimore, and the Squawk ability allows you to get turn 2 double Archeops almost about 80 to 75% of the time. I'm not even kidding on that. So I'm a big fan of Lugia. I think it's broken. I think people are sleeping on it, and you shouldn't be.
Yeah. And another deck that we're kind of seeing rise from the ashes, which is a counter to Lugia and gains a little bit more traction now because one of their kind of tech cards becomes really good as an attacker, is Miraidon. Now, Miraidon obviously as a lightning type deck, going into Lugia with the weakness there, we have Raikou in the deck. Now, Raikou is technically an underutilized card. It was honestly a Forest Seal Stone target, but obviously able to ramp up now with the wider bench. So, LDF, what do you think about Miraidon in this format? Have you played any? Do you think it's a deck to be scared of?
Yeah, so I think Miraidon's decent. You know, I know a few people that were like kind of playing it for a bit. Miraidon is still a very powerful and fast deck, thanks to the ability to use Iron Hand still. Gaining Mewtwo makes the deck insane because like you can literally like have your board just be like draw support and lightning Pokemon. So it can be like Fez, Mew, Luminion, Greninja. Like Miraidon with Area Zero is really strong. My issue with Miraidon though is it struggles into the big Pokemon decks. Like your Zard matchup is abysmal in my opinion. Your matchup into Dragapult, I think, is also not very good. I think your matchup into something like the Tropicos deck could be close. Like, I think the deck is decent, but it feels like it's just kind of missing a little tiny, like, I don't know. It feels like it's just missing like a really good matchup to be popular. Like everyone's high on Brier Zard right now, and that matchup just feels really bad for Miraidon. The one thing I'll say, yeah, your Lugia matchup's pretty solid. Being able to use Raikou now as an actual like main attacker is kind of cool. So being able to play Area Zero and use Raikou for more damage actually saves your. It can save you because sometimes you go Generator in the late game to try to build up a Miraidon, and then you get one energy, and that sometimes loses you the game. Or now you could just safely put one energy on a Raikou with a Generator and not have to worry about like not getting 2 energy every single time. Also, Raikou punishes your opponent for taking advantage of Area Zero. If you're playing against Miraidon, your opponent gives you that Area Zero, and you start benching a lot of Pokemon, you can get immediately punished by like a big Raikou knockout out of nowhere. Raikou also does make your Raging Bolt matchup a lot stronger. Miraidon infamously struggled against Raging Bolt, and I still think that matchup is actually like slightly unfavored for Miraidon, but now that you have Raikou, if the Raging Bolt player puts too many Pokemon into play, you can actually get a turn 1 knockout with Raikou on a Raging Bolt with the Area Zero. So I think the deck does gain a little bit of a power boost with Area Zero, but it's still Miraidon. You're still playing the lottery with Generator. You're still kind of a pile sometimes. Like you get those weird Miraidon hands where it's like 5 energy, and then nothing else. Like, it
Right.
happens a lot. So Miraidon can be bricky. It also can be a bit of a lottery, like Lugia, but it's strong, it's fast. A lot of the time, if your deck like functions, you're most of the time getting a turn 1 2-prize KO no matter what.
Right.
Most of the time that does happen. It's very consistent at doing that, much like Roaring Moon. Yeah, I think it's good. I think Miraidon is decent. There's a lot of diehard Miraidon stands.
That's true.
So I'm not going to be surprised if somebody has a good run with it at like Kentucky or Dortmund or something, but I think Miraidon's like perfectly fine. I don't think it's the best turbo deck. I think Raging Bolt is, but I think Miraidon is like probably the second best behind above Moon.
Which is kind of wild because that's like the opposite of what we were saying for Baltimore, is that Miraidon was a great deck posed, and as Dom said, Raging Bolt was kind of poo-poo. But, you know, we look at it now and it's kind of flipped. I mean, Raging Bolt does have those lines. What I will say in testing with Miraidon, it is really cool to daisy chain your Miraidons for tandem unit and get literally all of your Pokemon out on the bench on turn 1. But yeah, you whiff that generator and it still feels kind of bad. So that's kind of where I'm at with the deck too. But I do think that it still has some legs to stand on. If you don't see too many Charizards, then you're having a great day. But you just got to play that matchup roulette a little bit. We're going to talk about some other things here now, getting a little bit more serious about the meta. We're putting our extra special glasses on. Zach, I want to hop back over to you. Do you think that our meta is too wide open with the amount of good decks right now? Or do you think that that's a good thing where we don't have necessarily what's called the triangle of good decks, where we have one deck that's almost BDIF, if not BDIF, a deck that beats that, and then a deck that beats the others? And that's kind of how we've seen it in other past formats. I feel like right now in the meta, we're really diverse on the amount of decks that are good. So what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know if a diverse metagame necessarily means it's a healthy metagame. I don't know if we don't know what we don't know yet.
Gotcha.
So right now, like, it's really easy to be like, yeah, we can take Rowan or Ian's list from Baltimore, have a Regidrago list. Doesn't gain anything. You have a best list for Drago. I think like there's a lot of work to be done in this metagame, and it's something that's going to continuously evade us. I personally like okay, so I like having variety. It's cool, but I also think it's one of those things where it kind of sometimes sucks having so many decks because you can't properly test against them. The metagame's not properly developed. You can't really tell what's real and what's not. Like, Hisuian Zorak could end up winning Joinville, and we'd be like, okay, now it's just a deck that we need to have on default. No one really knows what's going on. So as I'm helping people prepare for Dortmund and Joinville, it's more or less, do you go with the new school thought, having a deck, and you think you crack the code earlier than everyone else? Or do you play an older deck that's maybe a little bit more matured, a little bit more chiseled out, like Charizard, Drago, any of those decks? And even for some of those decks, like if we look at Miraidon that you were previously talking about, there's 50,000 different new Area 0 lists. And it's like, is 14 energies, 15, 16, 17 energies the correct count when it comes to that deck? Should you play Super Rod to get back your Mewtwo EX or not? Like, there's a lot of questions. And I think a lot of questions means that there's definitely like some areas like to reap the benefits of testing. I also think there's a lot of things where you can't humanly test as much for this format as possible, and you might just find some surprising issues. So it might make our format a little bit more luck based than we want it to be, having this wide of a format, because you just have to leave things up for chance at a certain point.
Right. Absolutely. And somebody that's tried their best, if you follow Dom on Twitter, which you should, Dom has been trying to test literally every single deck and posted a picture the other day of all of the decks laid out on the table here. So Dom, how's that been going? Do you think that we are actually in a too wide or widely diverse meta going into Stellar Crown here?
Okay, so I'd like to say I think we can write off Tinglu this format. Okay, I don't think that deck's very good right now. But like, I think the format is really wide and it's really healthy if you're a casual player, right? Where I think like it's really fun if you're not chasing an invite or trying to test super seriously. And I think that that's something we have to think about is like the more casual player that Pokemon might want to have in the game, where like you could play a pile to locals and do well because maybe your pile just beat the matchups you want to play against, right? Where we've seen in different formats, it's like tier 0, you play Charizard or you beat Charizard, and that's just it, right? I think it's healthy in a sense that it's fun for casuals, but I think competitive wise, it's probably just kind of weird because like there's like I test for hours every single day, and it's just like there's nothing that like there's no you can't test everything, right?
Right.
There's matchups where it's going to be, oh, I've never played against this, or I've tested 2 games against it and they were completely different than right now, right? Like some people, like I don't know, it's just it's a hard meta, and that's kind of what Zach was saying. Where like everybody's like, oh, the meta's diverse, that's really cool. When we look at Champions League and there were 9 decks in top 16, it's like, yeah, that sounds cool. It's like until you have to test 9 different decks and know those matchups well because they're all good decks, right? And I think like it's really tough to be a competitive player right now, just because like you can never be ready for whatever, and like streamlined lists aren't a thing yet, so it's like it's a scary metagame to play to an event because, like Zach said, Hisui and Zoroark could be BDIF and none of us know it.
Right. And I definitely agree with that. And I think that, I am also one that, Zach and I both kind of go to events and we bring literally every card with us, which is annoying, but also it is effective because you're trying to find those matchups that you need to beat and need to go into an event knowing how to play. But as a competitive player, it is a lot of time. We look at VGC for Pokemon. So the video game players spend a lot of time building their teams and seeing what works because their meta is so diverse. There's so many different attacks, so on and so forth. But when we have the trading card game kind of pivot over there, it really just becomes a little bit of a hassle on one end if you are trying to strive for that world championship goal and trying to figure out what these decks are. So, Matt, do you think out of this weekend, because we are a double regional weekend, we're going to see this diverse meta kind of shrink right down? Do you think somebody's going to break a deck and people are going to be mind blown out there, or Tord's going to go to one of these regionals and pull up with, Pokestop Charizard or some nonsense like this?
That could be fire.
It could be fire. So, LDF, what are your thoughts on something like that might happen this weekend? Are we going to see a big change?
I think there will probably be a few like surprise decks. We are in a bit of a wide open meta, like you said, where there is actually a lot of like random variety. There's a lot of like random cards that could do good. Like I wouldn't be surprised if somebody made day 2 at Dortmund with like an insane, weird cooked up deck that nobody thought of, and spicy stuff can tend to do well. I'm like even with day 2 being harder to make it to, so a lot of like the more like random stuff that does do good at a tournament usually can't just go 6-2-1. They actually now have to go 7-2, which is a lot harder. So like I was like, well, this was kind of my thought with Baltimore was all the random rogue jank was going to not make it to day 2, and it was all just going to be meta decks in Baltimore because of how hard it is to get day 2 now. But it turns out that was actually not the case, and actually was a decent amount of variety. So I think that this will probably happen in Dortmund. I think Tord's probably cooked up some like insane list with Dusknoir or Charizard. I think Tord's probably going to cook something up for Dortmund. I'm excited to see what he plays, and I do think there's going to be a bit of surprises. Like this time next week, I'm sure you'll be talking about like another like really interesting weird archetype that just popped out of nowhere and starts doing really good, and everyone's got to consider it now on their meta radar because oh yeah, this deck's actually like decent.
All right. Well, I mean, I definitely think that's true. I think that we're going to see a lot of crazy lists come out of these 2 regionals. Now, Zach, back over to you. I want to ask you, with having all these discussions about brand new decks, brand old decks, what do you think are going to be the most played decks this weekend, if you had to take a guess?
Oh, okay. That's actually a really good question. And I mean, I should have probably prepared a little bit more. No, I'm kidding. Really, I put up a chart here. I'm just scrolling up through my messages because I literally just shared this. I think a lot of people are going to flock to Raging Bolt. I think that's an easy answer when it comes down to that. It's most successful deck right now. A lot of players really like Raging Bolts. Beyond that, I think Charizard's going to be incredibly popular. And if I had a number 3, I want to say I think Terrapagos is going to be up there. I think a lot of people are kind of discovering that kind of Josh Frink-like builds. I think it was originally popularized by Evan Campbell and then really kind of going from there. So the Pidgeot, Dusknoir, Terrapagos builds, I'd say those would probably be my top 3. And then kind of a mix of everything else. Like I can't tell you if Regidrago's a top 5. I think there's going to be some people that pull up with a Shrouded Fable legal deck and don't even know, right? Like I think legitimately when we have 1,000+ competitors at these regionals, there's got to be some uninformed people that come to the metagame. They're like, oh, I thought Stellar Crown was legal next week or whatever.
Yeah.
No, it's going to be illegal for those events. So
couldn't even find the reg link online and just rolled up with my Shrouded Fable deck.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm actually not registered.
Yeah, exactly.
But it does happen. I do like those choices though, Zach, for top shares of the meta. I'm going to go out on a limb here and pause this podcast and say that Ghostbusters should be the name of the deck, but I'm just going to throw that out there. You can TM me on that. But Dom, what do you think is going to be the biggest meta share for these 2 regionals here, in your opinion?
I think Raging Bolt for sure is like the number 1 deck. I don't think there's a situation it's not. Just because like it's really easy. It has a chance versus everything except like Quad Cornerstone and Noivern. That matchup is literally not winnable. But that deck might not be good now because we have Dragapult and Lugia and stuff. So and Gardevoir's bigger, so hopefully that deck goes away because I dislike that deck. I played it to a cup and I bubbled out. But like I think Raging Bolt is number 1. I think Charizard's a number 2. Number 3, like there's so many decks that could be number 3, and I talked about that on my video today where I'm like, I think it could be Dragapult, Regidrago, Lugia, Gardevoir, like any of those 4 decks at number 3, and I'm not going, whoa, what? Like I'm just like, yeah, that happens, right? Like going into Baltimore when Raging Bolt was number 2 or whatever, I was actually perplexed. I was like, how is literally everybody on Twitter saying don't play this deck right now, and somehow it's the number 2 deck? I don't think that's gonna happen this event. I think it's like there's just like I'm not surprised at any deck being number 3. I think like Raging Bolt and Charizard are 1 and 2, but my guess would be Regidrago at number 3 because I think it does pretty good into Charizard, obviously. And then I think like Dragapult's probably okay, and like Regidrago it's also kind of like Raging Bolt. It can beat everything. Like Raging Bolt's your toughest matchup, but even still, like if you know your lines, it's not even as abysmal as everybody says. That being said, though, there's a lot of skewed results from limitless events, and I think that we should think about those with a grain of salt because they say that Raging Bolt beats Gardevoir 65% of the time. It does not do that. It's not even close to that number actually. And if you're losing to Raging Bolt as Gardevoir, you're not playing right. So we have to think about like
a single rolls out and then pass.
Yeah, unless they're donking you, then you're losing. But like when people are like, "Yep, a fully set up Raging Bolt versus a fully set up Gardevoir, Bolt stands a chance." Like Bolt is getting torched.
Yep.
If they go Arvin TM Evo turn 1, I'm scooping. It's over.
Playing the game, not a fun time if you're a Raging Bolt player. So we obviously heard a lot of the same decks. LDF, are you in agreement or disagreement? Do you think something else is going to be up there in the top echelon of most played decks?
Yeah, I think Zard will be number 1 just because it's Charizard, and I think it'll probably be like Zard, probably Bolt, I guess, and then I think Lugia is probably safe in top 3. Those top 3 will be Lugia, Regidrago. I think Lugia is like underrated. I think people are going to play off that. And then also it did get second at the Champions League. I think a lot of people are really like just attracted to Lugia and what it does. Right. Even though I think Lugia is really strong, that Zard matchup gets a bit worse with Brier, but Lugia is still Lugia. And I think coming off of like a really strong like Baltimore, like I'm pretty sure Lugia is going to probably be like at least 3rd most played deck or 4th most. So I think those will be the top 3. I think Zard will be the most played, and then it'll be Raging Bolt, and then maybe like Lugia, maybe like Drago, and then I could see, Miraidon being top 5, maybe Terrapagos being in top 5. Yeah. Something like that.
Okay, I can definitely see that too. We're going to hop over to one of my favorite parts of these meta forecasts, and we're going to talk about the rogue decks. Now, on my mind, I always have control. So I'm always thinking of how control can be built as a rogue deck. Obviously, we saw the Cornerstone Noivern package come through for Baltimore Regional. So we could see a little bit more of that. We saw some Snorlax do well at day two. And that's a deck that I was, I'm a big Snorlax fan. I said, hey, not the best time to play this deck. Obviously, Regidrago V-Star just chews it up and spits it out most of the time. I wasn't assuming that Raging Bolt was going to be doing well. Ancient Box has a pretty decent matchup into things like that. So that's where my mind went with Snorlax. But maybe now with these newer decks, people want to play the newer cards or play the other bigger, better archetypes that are out there. Maybe it is time for a control deck to do really well. So that's what I have on my pick for rogue decks. Zach, over to you. What do you think we might see here for a rogue deck?
That's a good question. I think we might see a lot of like Dusk Noir based decks. I think one of the new like rogue decks is play something plus Dusk Noir, and that's
right.
Something successful. Might not be the roguest deck, but I do think we will see some Hisuian Zorg V-Star fans that are coming back, because I know a lot of people played that when the card first came out, and they were really excited to play Hisuian Zorg. The other one that I kind of have in the back of my mind that I think people might play is the Regis. So we see all those Pokemon out there that I think you just got to get the right player, the right list that can go far. And I know there's a lot of players that have taken Regis to a deep run, including myself. I know that Drew Kennett's played it. I know that there's a large group of people that have played Regis to great success. So maybe someone's able to crack the code on that one. It's kind of a fan favorite. And even if it's not the best player in the room, there's a lot of players that still might just play it because it's you got to have the fellas, and you got that extra large bench now, so it seems really cool.
That's right. Hurting myself to hurt you. That's what the deck's all about. So, Dom, what do you think? Do you have any rogue decks on the old skull brain that you're thinking about? You think that you're trying to cook up in the lab over there?
I can't lie. Me and all my homies, we love Arceus, okay? And it seems weird to say Arceus is a rogue deck.
Yep.
Your Raging Bolt matchup is literally not winnable. Like I think I've tested maybe 50 games as Arceus into Raging Bolt, and I think I won maybe once or twice.
Yeah.
And that's like they dead draw like turns. Like I think Arceus could actually be okay into this event. You just dodge Raging Bolt. You dodge Moon, and you might be okay. There's this really cool arc like fire toolbox with like the Aurora or what's that energy called?
Is it Luminous energy?
Yeah, Luminous. Yeah. I was gonna call it Rainbow, and then I'm like, no, it's Aurora, and then I'm like, no, that's formats ago.
Give me Rainbow back, please.
Yeah, please make Lugia BDIF for like a little bit longer. Come on. It's like I think Arceus could be cool. I've seen Arceus with Dusk Noir doing well.
Yeah.
That deck is super fun actually. At a cup. We were playing and we watched one guy beside us go triple Dusk Noir off an Arceus. Turn 1 and just go board wipe, like turn 2, I guess. But it was like that. It was ridiculous. I've never seen a deck do that. He literally like it's just a really cool concept, I guess. And Arceus, like he's a cool guy. Okay, me and my fellas like Arceus. I think Palkia is not rogue enough to say that. I love Hisuian's artwork. I'll agree with Zach. I think that deck's cool. I won't agree with Zach and say Regis is cool. I liked Regis, but Regis needs to be put back in the binder. They're bulk cards. They don't need to go in the binder. But Regis needs to be put away in the past formats until next format when we get that weird like cart thing that lets you bench everything. Then Regis is cool.
Fair. All right, LDF. I know that you're a Reggie stan, but do you have any other cool rogue decks? You are the rogue deck master. That's what your YouTube channel is all about. So give me the spice here, if you will.
Yeah, I was gonna say Regis too. Regis is cool, but it does have a lot of weaknesses. Like it's not great into decks that have the ability to take multi-prize turns. Like Dragapult can do that. Drago can do that with Kyurem. What else? Like Lugia with Legacy, Iron Hands. Dusknor can knock out a Reggie. It's a fun deck. I want it to make day 2. I'm hoping it does. I really miss Regis. I just think that there's too many gatekeepers right now. My other 2 rogue picks that I had, though, were Goldengo. I think Goldengo's one of those like random decks that just keeps popping up and doing well. I mean, I like Goldango. I've seen success with it. I think the deck's a lot of fun. You can still use Palkia, Prime Catcher, Cologne. Actually, the deck does get a bit stronger if Palkia is better in this format. Because now you have Palkia as like a really good aggressive attacker, which is nice because if you're playing against an Area Zero deck or play Area Zero in Goldango with like an Ogre Pun or something, that could be kind of cool. But I think Goldango's cool. I think it's fine. Brier might be the only thing that holds it back, but I think Goldango's like not a bad deck either. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody got like day 2 with it. Like I think the Cameron Kawasaki got like back-to-back finishes in like top 64 at Worlds and Baltimore with Goldango. So it's just one of those decks that like always randomly does good. And then Lost Box, I think, is another deck that I think actually is going to be good again because Regidrago is still in the meta. I think it's still a very strong deck. Drago could still be a top 3 deck post tournaments, but Lost Box is a deck that is only going to be good if a deck like Regidrago drops off in play. And I think that if Drago does pop off in play a little bit, and I think it will, I think Drago's going to still be played, but I don't think it's going to be popular. It'll still like be in that top 5 range. But that's fine for Lost Box. Lost Box is a deck that is unchecked right now. No one's playing Jirachi. Like, there's not that many decks using Mana Feast, so Greninja is still good. The deck still has really good prize mapping with Sableye and Cramorant, Blood Moon. You still have a lot of options with how you want to build your Lost Box deck. And I think Lost Box is primed to have a bit of a comeback. I don't know if Sablezard is better than Turbo. Turbo might be better because I think Sableye is just a better card right now because especially if you're playing against like a Dusknoir deck, you can go like turn 2 Sableye, both Duskulls. If you punish them and not let them get a Dusknoir out, I think Lost Box like farms every Dusknoir deck in the format. Double Mana Feast still is probably going to be necessary though to beat Dragapult, or not Dragapult, Drago and Palkia. Palkia can very easily go turn 2 Prime Catcher Cologne against you, and that's very problematic. So I think Lost Box needs to play double Mana Fee, but I think Lost Box is due for a comeback, and I'm definitely excited to see what pile Lost Box decks do good at these next couple tournaments. It's a deck I've been testing a little bit in this format. I want the deck to be good again. I love Lost Box, but it's definitely a little weak, but I think that Dodge Drago, maybe Dodge Dragapult too, and I think the deck is primed to have a comeback.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely in rogue territory for now.
Yeah.
And we could see a space for it for sure. I did shout out to Jarek on TSS. Played into a Serena EX deck. That's something else that I did not think that I would be saying. But those are like little rogue decks like that. I see sprinkled Greninja EX. We see Greninja EX.
Both those are really fun decks. I will say Serena tests much better than you'd think.
I thought so too. But yeah, so little decks like that, we might see some spicy, non-North American players go to those regionals and play for sure.
Yeah, Serena EX Masterclass.
Let's see it.
Yeah.
I'm here for
I think there'll be a couple Greninja EXs in day 2 at Dortmund because that Greninja Palkia Dusknoir deck I think still kind of translates pretty well in this format.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw somebody make day 2 with that Palkia deck with like Greninja because you need Greninja for yellow.
Lots of fighting weak Pokemon out there in the meta right now too.
Oh yeah, Tropicos too.
Yeah,
so,
Tropicos
Greninja's pretty broken.
Yeah, Greninja. I don't know. I did a Greninja video and like Greninja Owls too. You're quick searching like essentially 3 times a turn. That deck is broken right now. It is like you farm some of the popular decks in the meta and like it's a cool deck. I could see Greninja doing well. Probably won't top 8, but it might do well.
I would love to see a good Greninja list. If you're out there listening, make a good Greninja list. Drop it down in the comments for this video for sure. We would love to see that. So hopping over, we like to do a little bit more of the human element because we are not only Pokemon players. That's not what we sit and do. We do sit and do that for most of the day. I'll be real. But we also are people, right? And so we have other things. Obviously, I love spooky season. It is September. We're weaning at the end of September. We're getting into October. So I want to talk to everybody about their favorite spooky movie. So we're going to start off with you, Zach. What's your favorite spooky movie? Get you into the season, get you going.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'm kind of a horror film kind of person. I don't know. Whatever. Not like I'm a nerd about it or anything else like that. I'm nerdy about Pokemon. Yeah, literally, Dom and I went to go see Long Legs downtown Montreal.
Long Legs.
With big reclining chair, we cuddled. We shared a little drinky poo.
This did not happen. We did see the movie, but
like nearly like I was dying. That movie had some jump scares. Okay. I like being scared.
Does look good.
So if we're going for like the family-friendly vibe, as I'm a dad, I'm gonna go Nightmare Before Christmas. I think that gives me Halloween vibes. It's a Halloween and Christmas movie.
That's
you
right.
wanna know what? You can be putting up your Christmas tree in October. I'm Canadian. It's gonna snow, right?
Sure.
All right. So that's my first pick.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we're gonna get into the gruesome, like the close your ears kind of kids, oh, I think I want to go like maybe it's not like Halloween spooky, but I do kind of like The Purge.
Okay.
I think
The
that
Purge
movie like just kind of scares me because it seems kind of believable.
Right.
I mean, there's always some kind of like politics going on, and as a Canadian,
Sure.
we just got Justin Trudeau. That guy's kind of like cute looking, so that's all we got going on with him. Beyond that, I just feel like that one's kind of believable.
Sure.
But if we wanted to go more of like a traditional like masked kind of guy and Halloween vibe, I think it's called Strangers. The Strangers.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the Strangers.
I think that one's also pretty believable and scary. So
Cool.
Those are my top three, and play them in any order you want. Fantastic sandwich there, no matter which way you're going to do with it. Bring some popcorn because it's all about the popcorn, extra butter, large Diet Coke. Thanks.
You got to get in the experience. That's what it is. All about the movie experience.
Yeah.
I also am a huge horror movie buff. So we'll get into that when I get around to my turn. But Dom, we'll head over to you here. Dom, what are your favorite movie to get you in the spooky season?
Okay, so I don't know if this is really a Halloween movie. It always scared me as a kid, so I always assumed it was a Halloween movie, but that might not be true. I love the movie Coraline.
Oh, okay.
It happens during the fall, so it might be a Halloween movie.
It is on the Disney Plus Halloween collection. I did see
exactly
that
Halloween movie Coraline. If Die Hard can be a Christmas movie, Coraline can be a Halloween movie.
That's right.
I also do love horror movies though. Like all the Halloween, like the movies actually Halloween. Those are really good. Yeah, that might be my favorite one actually.
Okay.
Just the Halloween series in general. Nightmare on Elm Street's really good. Yeah, those would be it.
Heard they're coming back. They're going to try to remake it again for Nightmare on Elm Street. I don't know if that's true or not, but good on you. I mean, Rob Zombie did okay with some of the Halloween remakes. Some of them were kind of meh. And then the actual Halloween canon stuff was like hit or miss for me. The last one was not the greatest, but shout out to Jamie Lee Curtis for doing her thing and sticking with it, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I love those movies too. I grew up watching like Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street and all the Friday the 13th movies. So like slasher movies for me are up there for sure. Now, LDF, I know that you're also a horror movie buff for sure. All of us here, it's a perfect cast. So LDF, what's your favorite movie to get you into the spooky season here?
Well, right now I've actually been rewatching a lot of like Scooby-Doo stuff. I'm a big Scooby-Doo fan, and I mean the classic like 1970s Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? That's like very vintage horror, like late 1900s, like kind of horror-y aesthetic vibe stuff. So I'm a big fan of Scooby-Doo. Been watching a lot of that.
Please tell me you watched Zombie Island, the movie.
I did. That's a very good movie. That movie is
the pirate one goes crazy.
The pirate one goes crazy.
I love that one.
Zombie Island is like
Zombie Island is probably the best like Scooby-Doo media out there, to be honest with you.
Yes,
I do want to butt in and say that my favorite thing about the Scooby-Doo anything, because Scooby-Doo I used to like as a kid. I really like that one movie that has that Outkast song. So if anyone's like a hip hop head, I really enjoy that Outkast song, and I only think about it when
live
it comes
action
to
one.
Scooby-Doo.
Yes, Scooby-Doo type But anyways, Zach will get that. But big Scooby-Doo fan.
Snacks, my guy.
Yeah.
Puffing on that Fraggy.
I'm a big fan. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Scream too. Big fan of the Scream franchise. So probably gonna watch that.
Jenna Ortega is peak in the new ones.
Free up.
Very good. I like the new Scream. It was all right. The original '90s Scream is like a goated movie though, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Scary movie better.
It's all right, but my local theater likes to play like horror movies all Halloween, like old horror movies, and they're like $5 tickets. So hopefully be doing that again. I think last year we watched Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. We were trying to
Okay.
see Halloween, but the original they didn't play for some reason. So hopefully this year they play it because I've seen it already, obviously. But it'd be nice to like
Yep.
rewatch it again. But yeah, I'm a big Halloween fan. Definitely excited to watch all the movies. There's probably a few horror movies out right now. I haven't been to the movies in a bit, but
Mhm.
might go see a couple horror movies too. Also a big
Nice.
fan of It. That's another movie I wanted to
Ooh,
mention.
okay.
It's another one of those like horror
Yeah.
movies I'm like a big fan of.
Solid
Yeah,
choice.
welcome to Derry coming out soon. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, that one's gonna be good.
Pretty pumped. But yeah, I mean, for me personally, I'm a large child, and I have 2 children, so I like to get them ingrained in the Halloween movie watching. We watch a lot of Hocus Pocus around this time. There was the Disney Channel original movie Halloween Town. They watch. I don't care for, but that's their thing. I know. We watch Ernest Scared Stupid, a '90s classic. I love that movie. My favorite like spooky movies, a little bit scarier for kids, but I love watching Insidious is one of my all-time favorites.
It's a good one.
I watch American Werewolf in Paris. Was fantastic late '90s movie.
I like
Has
Emily in Paris.
Emily in Paris. That's of course you do. I do also have to watch that. That's not as scary, but scares me sometimes. But American Werewolf in Paris, I love
Women
werewolf
scare
movies.
PJ.
It did scare me a little bit. And then if you have the chance, if you haven't watched it, download it right now. Make it your homework. Go watch Trick or Treat. Trick or Treat, by far the all-time best Halloween movie. It is very scary. It is multiple stories in one, so you have to watch it all the way through. But probably the best one, Universal Hollywood did a whole horror fest on that movie
Halloween
alone.
Horror Nights.
Yeah, Halloween Horror Nights did a whole Trick or Treat theme before. That's how good this movie is. So definitely do yourself a favor. If you love spooky movies, go check that one out for sure. But that's all I have to say here on this Metaforecast. We're going to be doing these pretty much every week unless there's not a regional happening. So stay tuned to the channel for everything there. And I do want to give a big shout out to all of our sponsors that help make the Shuffle Squad possible. Make sure you're going down in the description of this video to check out all of the links. We've got all the hyperlinks that'll drive you right there. And we've got all of our discount codes too. So make sure that you're doing yourself a favor and saving some cash money on all of these Pokemon related products and helping out the squad in the meantime. Now, I will let all of my great panel of guests do their shout outs and also plug where you can find them online. We'll start out with Zach here. Zach, why don't you go ahead and let the people know where they can find you?
Yo. You can follow me on X at Zach Lesage PTCG. You could also check me out on Metafy. Zach Lesage, one of the top performing coaches in the game. I offer coaching one-on-one services. I offer group classes, VODs, you name it. I'm here to try to help you. That's really where I'm at. Shout out to the Shuffle Squad, one of my great sponsors. Ultimate Guard, Kayfabe Cards, The Upper Hand, PTCGL Store. So we got some great places over there. Hopefully I named them all. If not, hit me up in the DMs because I know I'm the worst. Hand it off to Mr. Dom.
Yeah, down.
Yeah, so I just like to shout out Tom Day. He's my go. He's the guy that he's who I test all these decks with. He supplies a lot of the cards because guy has copious master sets. It's literally ridiculous.
Tom is
yeah,
goated.
shout out
Tom Day.
Yeah, shout out Tom Day. We're all shouting him out. PJ, you know Tom Day as well.
I do.
I guess we all know Tom Day. He's a beauty guy. He's a beauty guy. Yeah, and then find me on Twitter at TempoPTCG. My YouTube is DomRichiePTCG. If I ever post there. My Metafy is TempoTCG. I do budget coaching where we can just talk, do whatever you need to do. And then I also do $5 classes on there sometimes. So yeah, that's pretty cool. But yeah, shout out the Shuffle Squad for being the best team ever and changing my life. So appreciate it that you and Zach and PJ.
Yeah, absolutely. And LDF, finally, last but not least, where can the people find you and any shout outs you'd like to give?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, all that jazz at Little Dark Fury. Yeah, been posting more shorts, so if you're interested in the short form content, make sure to follow my TikTok and stuff. And yeah, big shout out to the Shuffle Squad. Once again, thanks for having me on this episode. It was a lot of fun talking about the meta, kind kind of giving me more insight as, I guess, kind of how I'm going to be testing going forward. And I'm excited for this weekend to see what cool stuff pops up. So yeah, big thank you again for having me on. Fun talk, and it was a blast.
Absolutely. We are going to head on out of here, so we will catch you next time on the Shuffle Squad.
Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes. You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.